Big matchup tonight for the Florida Panthers as they go into Raleigh to face the Carolina Hurricanes. And if Evan Rodriguez is healthy, does he go back to the third line?
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this Thursday, March 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. You follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. You can follow this podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. So, Cats fans, for the Panthers going into this one, this is something that we have been looking forward to since the last time these two faced off against one another just a few weeks ago, where Panthers were shut out 1-0 against the Carolina Hurricanes to end their 11-game road winning streak. But we're going to park that for later in the show. But Panthers were off as it was a travel day from Dallas to Raleigh, North Carolina, as crazy to think that on Tuesday, that was their last game outside of the Eastern time zone. So it's, when only an hour difference whenever it comes to the players, and with their adrenaline going and getting on the ice, you don't really feel the time difference. How many rinks do you go to? And then there's beer league hockey going on after late. So these players, they're just wanting to get on the ice and play some hockey too, especially since a lot of these guys stay up really late and take afternoon naps. So so the fact that they have continued to play at a certain time throughout these last few weeks, the last few months, as well, it has been really beneficial to their bodies as far as recovery, and also just knowing, being adjusted to that too. And really, once again, it's been a scheduling luxury for the Panthers going down the stretch. But I do want to talk about a conversation that Paul Maurice had with the guys over at NHL at the Rink. It's a podcast with Dan Rosen and Sean Rourke, and they had Paul Maurice on as he landed in Raleigh, North Carolina, and also spoke about the journey throughout the first 2 years, getting his team to this point, going to the Stanley Cup final, and also when it comes to the culture of the team. About the best part about it is, whenever someone comes in new to the roster, it feels like that they are already part of the group, and that they have been there for 10 years. They feel like even if they are a 10-year vet in the league, like a Kyle Okposo, who's been in the NHL since the late 2010s. Crazy to refer that as late 2010s, as if that was like 40, 50 years ago, but not really. But who's been around for a while, and also the fitting in. And also, Okposo once again spoke about not disrupting the group. And listen, when you have the leaders that the Panthers have, anyone coming in, it's not a matter of, oh, you're coming in, we're not going to allow you to disrupt what we have. It's, hey, welcome, great to have you here. Now let's build something together too here, and we just want you as a contributor here. No egos and all. And also, Paul Maurice in that same interview spoke about when he gets home to his wife, and talks about how much he likes the group, and the fact that they just are so excited to be a part of it too. And also think about a standard for Maurice when it comes to the last few weeks, where it looking back a few weeks ago, that stretch with Ottawa and Washington in it, and Carolina in that same stretch, Panthers, let's not forget, go 2-0-1. They you He doesn't like the way they play in the wins, but you like the way you play in the losses. And it's just a matter of trying to just get your game going. And it's something that we spoke about on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, when the Panthers were just getting back to their game at in the final 20 against the Dallas Stars. And it wasn't about the wins or the losses there. And going back to that game against the Carolina Hurricanes, that was one at the time where you know, puck luck just doesn't go your way. You're dealing with injuries at the time, but still you are liking the way you forecheck, the way you eliminate the space of your opponent too, up against the walls, battling it out and all. So those are the little things as far as what they look for, as far as like a process over results all the time. I mean, that's really what the regular season is. Obviously, you got to make it to the postseason. I mean, this is a conversation that we were having last season. Oh, how can you talk about playing playoff style of hockey when you're not even in the postseason? Remember that conversation last year? That was something that even I was very critical about in this point of the season. I mean, we're just almost 365 days since that rant in Toronto during a review that had a goal disallowed, and then the Panthers went on to win 6 straight. It was around this time last year, where Sam Bennett gets hurt in Detroit, and then they go on a 4-game losing streak starting in Philadelphia after that too. So about culture versus identity, at that time, the Panthers hadn't established their identity yet. And Marie spoke about how it was the start of many great things, the Boston series. You have to you learn so much from that, and then that's when the identity really started. And really, when it comes to this version of the team, Marie spoke about how you lost 7 players, and yeah, the Panthers lost a good amount of players from their Stanley Cup final team to now. I mean, but you think about what they replaced with it. I mean, Gudas was getting a little older. The Stalls were not going to be here for more than a year, and obviously, yeah, you were dealing with a lot of dead cap on your roster, but you really don't think about it when you say it out loud. 7 guys were replaced from last year's team to this year. And yeah, we spoke about the core staying around, but at the same time, new pieces coming in to try to fit more of what Paul Maurice wants to do, because you really don't get a sense of a grasp of this is your team until a few years in, when it talks about, when you think about the guys that you specifically want, because you're still trying to clean up another person's mess. I mean, that's more for the GM. I mean, this is Bill Zito's team now, but also Paul Maurice and him having a say. He is one step closer. Well, maybe he is already there about the team that he wants. I mean, look at the defense core, about all the guys he has there who gets in front of pucks, blocks shots, protects your goaltender, elite penalty kill too. And also spoke about how the regular season, as far as results, are just really about trying to get your game going. I mean, he spoke about when he was in Carolina, how they won the season series against the Boston Bruins, but then ended up losing in 7 games in 2009 too. So doesn't guarantee just because you get the regular season results. And also when it comes to the postseason, just try not to reinvent the wheel as far as approach, and knowing that it's going to be harder to get back to the Stanley Cup final, because style of play, the Panthers were banged and bruised and all, and that's a result of their style. But That's why you get Tobias Bjornfoot into the mix. That's why you'll have Jona Gadjevic, maybe, who's going to be a scratch the rest of the season in case something happens to a forward. Ryan Lomberg, maybe, if you need someone. So, because you never know. You can't predict the bad bounces, improper reads, a puck slightly not connecting on the tape that leads to a rush, and even this, a possible bounce off a referee, and the play keeps on going, and then maybe it results in a goal because everyone freezes by not intentionally, but just by reaction. Who knows? You just can't predict that, and that's really the approach goes back to this simple saying. It's about expecting the unexpected in a run, and spoke about how even when the Panthers were down 2-0 against Toronto in the second round, about how they were able to just lock it in and and find a way to get to make a comeback. And he related the Tuesday win in Dallas to that against the Toronto Maple Leafs back last April. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss more on the Panthers' upcoming schedule. And the Panthers, they are the best defensive team since who? We're going to discuss that and more here on Locked On Florida Panthers Podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Grocery bills are so expensive these days, but now they don't have to be. Start getting cash back on your grocery shopping with the free Ibotta app and get a cash back every time you shop. Do you love making money but also love spending money? Don't we all? Now you can make money while you spend it every time you shop with Ibotta. Spring break is around the corner, which means you're going shopping, but don't stop with your big trip and get nothing in return. Make sure you're getting cash back every time you shop with Ibotta. Ibotta is the free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Join the over 50 million users and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our users $5 for trying Ibotta by using code LOCKEDONHL when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's Ibotta in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONNHL. As you know, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today. Baseball fans, mark your calendars for March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern for the best MLB season preview, coming exclusively to Locked On Sports Today. On March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern, be the first to get the local insight from the MLB local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Find it on March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday. And good morning to you guys. First of all, recording this at 8:04 a.m., just 3.5 hours before the Florida Panthers take morning skate from PNC Arena in Raleigh, North Carolina. And speaking of the read that I just did as far as Locked On Sports Today, be sure to go to Locked On Marlins with Peter Pratt, as he will be preparing you guys all for the upcoming season for the Fish, even though personally I'm not really confident in the direction. But hey, still I'm still going to support the South Florida team here. But let's go in the direction of the Panthers as far as where they stand defensively for the last 10, 12 years for the Panthers. The Panthers, as far as what they've done on the road, I mean, in their last 16 games, they're 15-1 on the road, and they're the best defense as far as goals against since the 2013 Chicago Blackhawks. Shortened season, 48-game season to be exact, and they win the President's Trophy. It took them a while to even lose a regulation game that year. But you also think about how the Panthers, as far as this year, how have they fared against the top scoring teams in the league? Because we've been there before, where we've seen the Panthers high octane offense, but then they get shut down, especially with how they generated speed through the neutral zone. Washington kind of exposed that, even though the Panthers won in 6 games back in 2022. But look what happened in the very next round. The Tampa Bay Lightning saw the tape, saw what Washington did well. It was basically talent for the Panthers that got them through that first round. And then smart coach like John Cooper versus an inexperienced one in Andrew Brunette were figured out. But let's look at how the Panthers record has been against the top scoring teams in the league. As far as top teams, as far as goals for, excuse me, these are the top 5. Toronto, 5th, Vancouver 4th, Edmonton 3rd, Dallas 2nd, and Colorado 1st. The total record in those against those 5 teams, and mind you, there are 2 of them left against the Toronto Maple Leafs, one in early April, and then the last game of the season, game 82. So we don't know what that's going to be. We don't know if that's going to be anything, first of all. But 7-2-1 against those top teams in goals for. So style of play shows in the stat sheet when it comes to facing up against these top scoring teams. I mean, it goes back to the old saying of defense wins championships. And as of this morning, the Panthers, they have the 10th toughest schedule remaining, while the Boston Bruins have are 3rd, for what it's worth, too. So also going back to Tuesday night, where what Paul Maurice spoke about with the liking that they got back to their game in the final 20, not about winning, but there's something that he didn't say that kind of crept into my mind about him saying that, and why, if they didn't play well in that final 20, how it could linger after. And it's about really going into a matchup tonight against a very, very familiar opponent too, where this Carolina Hurricanes team, they have for years not abandoned. They had the inability to get that top end score. Yeah, great complementary pieces in Aho, Svechnikov's, but the issue with Svechnikov is health. But he could score 40 in any year, and possibly could be up for a Rocket Richard any year in a healthy season. But about complementing them and going after guys like Evgeny Kuznetsov, Jake Gensel. And I mean, look at the teams that they came from. Pittsburgh for Jake Gensel, Washington from Evgeny Kuznetsov, which Pittsburgh and Washington, two guys from those teams coming together to help out another division rival. Also add Dmitry Orlov to the mix as he was signed as a free agent, which the Panthers, that was way out of their price range. They were never going to sign Orlov to that number. But Jake Gensel can perform in the playoffs in this first 37 games, his first 2 postseasons, which was the second run for the Pittsburgh Penguins in their Stanley Cup run, in their back-to-back runs. Big time score in the 2017 run, and also in the first 2 postseasons where Jake Gensel eventually lost to the Washington Capitals. In those first 2 postseasons, 42 points in 37 playoff games. And yeah, there's the whole Sidney Crosby factor to it, which you got more quantity than quality. That's the public perception of that trade, which their second round pick for Michael Bunting could become a first if they make the Stanley Cup final. A lot of conditions throughout the trade deadline of, this turns into this pick if you make the Stanley Cup final, if you win the Stanley Cup final. So there's a lot of that going, and it's going to be interesting what late round picks turn into mid-round picks, or even seconds, 2s to 1s, depending on who lands where. I mean, I believe the Sam Carrick, Adam Henrique deal with Edmonton. Uh, there's conditions on that. If the Edmonton Oilers either win or make the Stanley Cup final, that's another team that's involved with that. Just like the Kyle Okposo trade and the Vladimir Tarasenko trade too. Those have conditions of if they make the final. It's not Eastern Conference final. I mean, I believe the trade with Chicago, with New York, with Patrick Kane, I believe that was if the Rangers made the final. So lot of conditions going out in the trade deadline, but also where they were came from. Those teams historically have been able to win with cheap talent too, which which Jake Gensel was still on his ELC. The Kuznetsov was just in year one of his 8-year deal, and also other teams who have been able to win under cheap contracts. I mean, Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, going back to the 2013 Blackhawks, right before they won their first one in 2010, the season that same season, right before they won, Toews and Kane both signed to bridge deals, but they were still on the last year of their ELCs too. So it's about really smart management for these front office. I mean, credit to Stan Bowman there for managing there, and Dale Talon, the guys who the ones who drafted these guys and helped bring them in. Jordan Binnington, Barbashev, and Jordan Kyrou with the St. Louis Blues too. So that is a great way of how they have won those teams with the cheap talent and too. And when you think about extensions like Yona Gadjevich, Lundell's contract is going to come cheap next season. I mean, Mackey, who scored a game winner the other day against his hometown, his home state AHL team in the Hartford Wolfpack in Charlotte last a few nights ago. So that's really what it. You look at how these teams have won with cheap talent. You got to give a lot of praise to them how they have been able to build at least things on the ice too. But how much pressure is there to win for the Carolina Hurricanes? We're going to continue that conversation here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood Gold. And do you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer from the other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with the 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th, and get started with Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of the first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% match on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC. Member SIPC is a registered broker dealer. Third and final segment here on this Thursday, March 14th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Thursday. So the Panthers go into tonight's matchup against the Carolina Hurricanes, which Carolina is 6-3-1 in their last 10, 4 points out of first against as they lost to the New York Rangers 1-0, which Igor Shesterkin had his second straight shutout. Is Igor back? Yes, he is. And also, Igor spoke after with the media and said it was his mother's birthday, so he couldn't afford to have a poor performance in that game against the Canes. But also, the Hurricanes are 8 points ahead of the Philadelphia Flyers, who we don't know which direction Philly is going to go as far as wins and losses coming down the stretch, because they sold at the deadline, and Tortorella also is currently suspended too for his tirade on the bench the other night against the Tampa Bay Lightning too. So that's another thing as far as where positionally there are. So looks like things could change. Looks like that they are locked in to the second spot in the Metropolitan Division. So as far as movement, one way or the other for the Panthers or the Hurricanes, doesn't look like that tonight's game's results will result in any of that, no matter which way it goes. As far as the season series between the Carolina Hurricanes and the New York Rangers, checking real quick if they have one more match. I'm doing this on the air as I'm talking to you guys. It looks like that the season series looks like it's done. Actually, New York won it 2-1, so they won't have any head-to-heads this season. Just check that now on the NHL app. But Panthers, let's go to their numbers, magic numbers to clinch real quick. 12. Their magic number to clinch a playoff spot is 12. That is a combination of wins by the Florida Panthers and Detroit losses. So 12 points needed as far as Panthers gaining and Detroit losing. Home ice advantage in round one is going to be 24 points, 27 for the division, and the one that people love to talk about the most, and I say that sarcastically, the President's Trophy. 30 points as far as the magic number for the Panthers to clinch that one. And also matchups for in games that involve the Panthers that you guys might want to watch tonight: Islanders, Sabres, Detroit, Arizona, Montreal, Boston, and the New York Rangers against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Those are the games that you guys that connect to the Panthers. Also, a question that I put up in a poll of if Evan Rodriguez is healthy enough to play, can you see a situation where he gets slotted back to the third line? And 78% of you said yes, out of 50 votes. So, but I would like to see Paul Maurice put Kyle Okposo there too, due to the fact that there are just over 15 games left in the season, and and to see kind of where Kyle Okposo where his game could be as far as playing with Anton Lundell. Like he said, he doesn't want to disrupt the chemistry in the locker room. I have a hard time thinking that he would, even if he tried, no matter where he slides in. So whether it's the fourth line right wing or the third, we'll see. But I would love to see Paul Maurice experiment a little there, just even if it's just for one game. But as far as the Hurricanes and the trade deadline, Kuznetsov, the trade, the Washington Capitals retained salary, and he's under contract for one more year after this year. So they just wanted to get him out of there. There was problems even going back to last year with Peter Laviolette and Brian McClellan. So Carolina, they bolstered their lineup. They got that oomph in the scoring punch. So is this the last hurrah for the Hurricanes? I mean, Rod Brindamore has been there for a while. They haven't had much. They haven't busted that door open to get through to make it to the Stanley Cup final. I mean, their last 3 Eastern Conference final appearances, they have been swept. So that's really about breaking through. I mean, the last one, the two that Rob Brindamore was a part of, he was the head coach, not the first one, but historically in the last 10 plus years, 3 times you've been to Eastern Conference Finals and been swept. But also, great news for the Hurricanes. Freddie Anderson's back after dealing with a blood clot issue, and thankfully for him, he is okay enough to play hockey. And we trust the professionals that are there to give him the green light as far as that. And gotta love how the Panthers last go round, 16 skaters, and you still dominated the play there. And also their lineup, what it's going to look like for the Carolina Hurricanes in this one. Expect Jake Gensel and Evgeny Kuznetsov to be on that second line with alongside with Marty Necas on the right wing. So everybody is slotted down one. You see more balance as far as their lineup there, as far as their top six. So it's gonna be strength on strength for these two teams as far as top end talent. As far as overall, as far as rolling four lines, I still like the Panthers as far as their depth, as far as getting veteran leadership in Okposo, a guy in Evan Rodriguez, who played with Jake Gensel. I also wonder what Evan Rodriguez has to say about his former teammate, if he is made available to the media if he takes the ice, first of all. So I wonder what he has to say about just what Jake Gensel brings to the table for the Hurricanes here. And when you look at the defense pair, basically everyone from last year's team is basically back. I mean, the only difference there is Dmitry Orlov in that bottom pair with Chatwood. Everyone, and also why I ask if it's the last hurrah for the Hurricanes, because just watching that game against the New York Rangers the other night, thankfully I have two TV screens in my living room so I could watch multiple games at once, and there was a graphic that showed all the UFAs and RFAs that they had. I mean, there was like over 10 of them. So in the Panthers situation, I mean, it's like you see a big number, but you also gotta you got to also distribute it properly too, as far as, yeah, you got Forsling locked up already, who's played above his value. Chances are Brandon Montour could look like the Christian Wilkins contract, where out of the price range for the Panthers, but you're happy for him that he'll be able to get the bag somewhere else, because eventually the bills do come due there, and it could come due for the Carolina Hurricanes. I'm not gonna pretend I know every single number as far as that, but just looking at the laundry list of free agents that are coming up there, you got to wonder if this is the last hoorah for them to finally pull through and get to the Stanley Cup final. Because I spoke about the Stars of coming out of the Western Conference, but who did I have coming out of the East in my preseason predictions? I had the Carolina Hurricanes, and the Panthers, they're getting them in back-to-back games too. So that is going to be interesting, as far as, even though, like Paul Maurice said in that interview with Dan Rosen and Sean Rourke about regular season games not really mattering at the end of the day, as far as looking ahead, you still want to develop the great habits of playoff hockey and getting there, because the grind is only it's only beginning, because the Panthers will have 4 days off of a non-hockey setting. Yeah, they'll practice and all. They'll have a few days off there. But next Saturday, starting in New York at Madison Square Garden, which could be for the President's Trophy, that specific matchup, the Panthers will play 5 games in 8 nights. But technically 5 games in 7.5 days, because that last one against Detroit on March 30th will be a matinee. So big stretch. The Rangers are currently on that stretch right now, 5 games in 8 days. But Panthers, thankfully, they'll get rest, which, again, Paul Maurice said there's a possibility that Bobrovsky could start all 3 games this week. Could start tonight against the Hurricanes, and could start Saturday at 6 p.m. against the Tampa Bay Lightning too. So this is something to monitor as far as the splits and the rest. And who knows, first day back from the days off, we could see Stolarz against the Preds and Bob gets a whole week off, or we could see Stolarz playing Saturday, and then Bob's next start could be next Thursday against the Preds. So somewhere in there, Bob will have a full week off. At least that's what I am predicting. But that's going to do it for today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Come back tomorrow on the show, as we will be recapping this game between the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes, as the Florida Panthers are attempting to win the regular season series and get one step closer to clinching the Atlantic Division and whatever else they are trying to clinch as far as getting the best spot for the Stanley Cup playoffs. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On AHL network, including Locked On AHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.